Well, we have hit the halfway point of the season, and it was marred with a lot of weather, cancellations, postponements, delays.
Saturdays and nights.
Saturdays.
That was the story of the weekend.
Yeah, we still have some games to be played yet today and tomorrow across the state. So obviously the weather played a big factor into all of the weekend plans thus far. And a lot of schools, at least in our area, had homecomings this weekend. So it's never fun when you have to play in the rain and get shuffled all around when you got homecoming festivities around that. Obviously, going into week 6, we have a plethora of good games, good matchups coming up this week. Obviously, we have 3 teams that have already hit playoff eligibility, with Lena Winslow, Forreston, and Aquin all claiming win number 5 as they go for win number 6 to become playoff clincher this week. We also have 4 teams who are no longer in the playoff picture as well, with Galena, Milledgeville, Amboy, and AFC all falling to 0-5 on the season. But one of the big things that we still see is another thing that we've talked about over the weekend, and that's having a lot of parity across the conference.
Yeah, we've done a lot of talking about who's beat who. Just the overall level of play, high defense. I mean, we've gone to so many matchups where, you're standing on the sidelines and you feel the hits, and you're like, oh, the whole crowd, oh. But no, I think this season is nothing short. I mean, there are so many teams that are just on the same level.
They are, and that's what makes it a lot of fun. I mean, here in years past, you could definitely see the top of the conference, and rightfully so. You still can. I mean, you still have Lena Winslow and Forreston at the top, and Aquin is quickly making their push to be in that top 3 speak. And in my opinion, they are in the top 3 as of right now in this point of the season. But just the overall level of play, I mean, like you stated, the level of hits that you're seeing in these games, everybody's bringing it every week. They may not be able to match up with every team that they play, but that's one of the best things to see is when every team is bringing it every week, because it gets every team prepared for the playoffs.
Well, I mean, and that's the bad thing is, when you look and see Galena's 0-5. We made it over to Durand this week, and we watched Galena play Du-Pec. So when you see Du-Pec's 4-1 and Galena's 0-5, I mean, you don't see the hard hits. I mean, that was an insane game.
Right.
I mean, it came right down.
And even the level of play. I mean, the Galena that we saw, I'm assuming, was not the same Galena that showed up against Stockton. It was the Galena that we saw weeks 1 through 3.
That played Orangeville, and
yeah.
I mean, and that was a game. But again, the record doesn't show that.
Yeah. Obviously, we got some big games this week, too. Some of these 0-5s are going to start going up against each other. Amboy and Galena square off. It's the last time that Galena has a crossover game, so it's big for both the North and the South, as a playoff point sways in either direction for the North teams or the South teams based on that game. AFC and Milledgeville play. That will affect the opponents that AFC or Amboy have, or AFC and Milledgeville have played already. So that would include East Dubuque is definitely looking at that game. Well, they've really played both, so it ain't really going to affect them that much. But so East Dubuque has obviously played AFC and Milledgeville, so that point is a moot point. But it will help Orangeville if AFC wins. It will help Stockton if Milledgeville wins. So you have those games that are starting to take place that are going to start affecting some of these playoff points. Obviously, Dakota and East Dubuque, both teams are at 2-3, so that's a big game too. Neither team wants to fall to 2-4, so they once again Dakota's playoff line's on the balance. East Dubuque also just came out of a big game with Orangeville that they fell short on, so here again, big game there. Du-Pec at Stockton. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. Obviously, Du-Pec has one loss on the season, that coming to Dakota, who's 2-3. They were able to beat EPC. We just saw what Dakota and EPC did as far as their competition with each other. So that's going to be a very big game. Obviously, Stockton just got done playing Lena Winslow, where they were blowing out 30-0, but it's really not indicative of how well Stockton played to keep that game that close, right? Aquin at EPC. Obviously, EPC is 2-3. Aquin's 5-0. But this will be a big test for the Bulldogs to see if they can handle line pressure, as EPC is very good at their defensive line in that three-man front that they have. And then our game of the week, of course, West Carroll at Forreston, 4-1 at 5-0. Can West Carroll hang on with Forreston? Obviously, we'll break that down later. Looking across the state, there were some good games. Obviously, one of the biggest ones was Moweaqua Central A&M and St. Teresa.
Yeah, and they beat St. Teresa 26-20, or oh my gosh, 28-26. Sorry, again, can't read. We've learned anything in these 5 weeks. I can't read.
Athens obviously got the big win over Auburn, 48-7. Aurora Christian did lose to Immaculate Conception, but to me that score was closer than I thought it might be, 35-3.
Yeah, and especially they were playing, number 1 ranked 4A. I mean,
right. But they're gonna, like we stated before, they're in a tough spot right now. They're going to get to 4 losses. They just cannot get to that 5th loss. So a lot of things to look forward to there. Chicago Hope won big over a team out of St. Louis, Normandy, 51-6. They improved to 4-1. Down south, Greenfield Northwestern upsets Carrollton, 22-14. A lot of people down in the WIVC had Carrollton picked to win the South Division. That win by Greenfield Northwestern just upset that pick, as long as Greenfield Northwestern can win out in the South. And Carrollton still has to play 3A ranked Beardstown yet too, so they very well could go 7-2 yet. Obviously, Anawan Wethersfield, another game of state ranked teams, beat conference rival Princeville 22-7 there. On the 2A side, Morrison upset Sterling Newman. Obviously, Morrison is in 1A, but Newman was ranked in highly in 2A, and Newman fell there. Clifton Central squeaked out one with Seneca. That was a little closer than people thought it would be. Fieldcrest pounded at Illini West. Aurora Forsyth won big time over Pleasant Plains. And then GCMS had a big win over Fisher as well. Bismarck Henning routed Westville, and pretty much the rest of the way down, Pana, Nashville, Knoxville, all won big. And then Watseka is the last undefeated team there in Class 2A. They too beat Dwight in a big game. And Watseka is one of those teams that's really on the bubble, 1A, 2A, because they're right at that 309 mark. So that's a team to watch out for in the 1A crowd, as well as we start to break down into the playoff outlook. But we'll break down this week's games right now. Our crossover game this week takes us to Galena, where the Pirates will play and host the Amboy Clippers. Both teams come in with an 0-5 mark. Last week, Amboy lost to Aquin 52-24. Galena lost to Du-Pec 27-20. And last year, these two teams met in Week 8, where Amboy won 35-14. Taking a look at some of the things that we've seen, especially over this past weekend here with Amboy and Galena.
Yeah, we saw both teams this week. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun as we were able to get out to quite a few games this week.
Yeah, we picked up 4. That's the first time this year that we've gotten, obviously, more than 1.
Yeah, we were able to pick up 4. We were able to listen in to the entire West Carroll AFC game. So, really, we got the better parts of 5 games in. Over the course of the weekend, just me and you. So that was a lot of fun. Anyhow, this game here, though, I feel that these two teams can match up pretty well. Right now, I would probably give the slight edge to Galena. I think with Ethan Heffel at quarterback, they can do a lot of things with him as far as running the ball, or throwing the ball, I mean. Running the ball, you still have Damian Stephanopoulos. Obviously, Peyton Power's out right now. That's a huge loss for the Pirates at this moment, but Stephanopoulos has really done a lot for the Pirates as well and what they can do moving forward.
Well, and, don't forget they switched up Anderson. And
Yep.
then Montezuma, he really has stepped up as well.
Yes, Julio Montezuma has done a lot as well. So, I mean, the Pirates have good attack.
Oh, they have the athletes, just like it feels like every other school does.
Right.
But I agree. I mean, I think that they're going to have the edge this week.
Yes.
Just based on what we saw against Du-Pec.
Yes, and I mean, you take a look at what Amboy did against Aquin. I mean, Preston Hinkle is able to get the ball out. Obviously, Marcus Wynn is... He's a stud.
Yeah.
Just hands down.
Oh, yeah.
So Amboy trying to get him the ball is excellent.
But
they need to do that.
And as excellent as that is, but he's keyed on.
He's keyed on all the time. We've
talked to numerous coaches, and that's who they key on. Every time.
And you have to, because you know how big of a threat he is.
Oh, yeah.
He's easily the fastest kid in the conference. He's great on defense as well in corner coverage. He's excellent, obviously, as we saw on offense, as he was able to get past the Aquin defense for a big score earlier in the first quarter. But Amboy tries to utilize him too much. And then with Norman in the backfield, it's almost like it's just Hinkle, Norman, and Wynn. But I noticed against Aquin, they tried to use Wacarius quite a bit too. So obviously they have a lot of things that they can do. Coach Jones is doing a lot of things that they've done there for a very long time. Obviously he was an assistant before he became a head coach under Coach Wisgowski as well. So he does a lot of things that Coach Wisgowski did back in Amboy's heyday years in the 80s, and they're still doing a lot of the same things today. They just need to change some things up. They did go to a spread a little bit there, so that would give them a little bit of an advantage. But in this game, I think the Pirates are going to be able to get it done. They just need to clean things up. They have had a lot of turnovers to start the season. But if Galena can get it going, especially in Galena, I like their chances.
I agree. I mean, but I think this is going to be a heck of a game.
It will be. It will be a great game to go watch for sure. Staying in the northwest corner of the state, we're going to East Dubuque, where the Warriors will play host to Dakota. Both these teams come in with a 2-3 mark. Last week, Dakota beat EPC 7-0, and East Dubuque lost to Orangeville in that great game in Orangeville, 29-28. Last year, Dakota won this game in Week 4, 35-29. And if you take a look at the last two meetings between Dakota and East Dubuque, they have been very close, closer than what people would think that they would be, considering where Dakota has been as far as the conference standings, getting to the playoffs, even last year's run to the quarterfinals. This year, obviously, they both come in with that 2-3 mark, and I think this is going to be another game that could go either way.
I completely agree. I mean, we also got to watch both of these teams, and we watched, the whole game. It's gonna, just like Amboy and Galena, I mean, I think it's gonna be a tale of defense. I mean, this is gonna be a great matchup.
Yes, definitely. I mean, obviously East Dubuque likes to go spread. Dakota typically is going to run a 4-4 defense or a 4-3 defense, depending on who they're playing. sticking with that 4-man front. We've seen Dakota in the past go to a 3-5 defense. In this game, I think you're going to see a four linemen down front. With that, Dakota's got to be able to stop the passing game. And so far, they've done a really good job with their pass defense. Granted, not a lot of teams pass the ball a lot in the NUIC, but Dakota this year is holding opponents like 66 yards a game passing. It's the run game that's really been the Achilles heel for Dakota at this point. They faced another team that's similar in what East Dubuque wants to do in Du-Pec, and Dakota had a lot of success with Du-Pec, specifically being able to run the ball up the gut, control the clock. This is one of those games where they're going to have to do that, and they're also going to have to rely on their defense to get a couple big stops, much like they did against EPC, where they were able to get 3 interceptions in that game. East Dubuque, obviously they have a lot of things going with Zach Meyer at quarterback. One of his biggest targets has been Declan Schemmel. You take a look at some other items too. Sam Huntington had a good game for East Dubuque at the running back position yesterday. Another one that I really thought stood out was Zach Schulting, both at end and then on defense, specifically at linebacker. He came up and hit pretty hard. And I really like the way that East Dubuque was trying to attack the run. They did a really good job attacking the run on Orangeville. And keep in mind, they also stayed in that game. I mean, they were down 2 scores.
Oh, yeah. I mean, granted, there was questionable refereeing at times, but I mean, I wouldn't take anything away from either team.
No, I wouldn't. You're right. There were some bad calls, and I'm not one that beats up on referees. I just don't, because we have such a referee shortage as it is. Where they're blowing calls or bad calls, definitely. I saw some hits that I felt were clean hits, legal hits. I saw a face mask penalty that there was no face mask involved.
Potential targeting penalty, or
what they thought was going to be a targeting penalty wasn't even close to that.
I was going to say, I was straight on that one. I was like, no.
And it just seemed like there was a lot of physical football being played, and I don't really see any personal fouls that were in the game. But like you stated, even despite the bad calls, the game was a phenomenal game, and I wouldn't take that away from that game. It's one of those games where, East Dubuque kept battling. I mean, like I said, down 2 scores, they battled back, had the opportunity to go for the win, missed it. There was a controversial touchdown call where the receiver was out of the back of the end zone. Again, part of that whole missed call sort of thing. But that's part of the game, unfortunately, in high school football. You don't have clocks, you don't have camera. You don't have cameras to go back to reverse calls. We don't have that fancy
pylon cam that they do in the NFL.
Right, exactly. But with that, I like Dakota in this matchup.
I went back and forth, especially after seeing that we had seen both games, but I'm going to have to agree with you on Dakota. I think they've got just the slightest edge.
Yep. We move into one of our biggest games of Week 6, where Du-Pec will travel to Stockton. Du-Pec comes in with a 4-1 record. Stockton comes in at 3-2. Last week, Du-Pec beat Galena 27-20, and Stockton lost to Lena Winslow, 30-0. Obviously, this is the first ever meeting between these two teams. You take a look at their schedules. Their only common opponent is Galena. Both of them have faced Galena each of the last 2 weeks. If you take a look at those games, obviously Stockton beat Galena 26-0, where Du-Pec was actually down to Galena by 2 scores, came back and brought their way back to a 27-20 victory. Looking at this game, you know, Du-Pec wants to spread you out. They want to be able to run, but they want to be able to throw. And really, they want to have that good mixture of both to throw you off guard. Stockton wants to run the ball. That's been apparent ever since Coach Snyder's been at the helm of Stockton. They want to run the ball. Obviously, this year, Stockton has the ability to run the ball with a multitude of players, much of like what we see out of the Forrestons and the Lena Winslows, where, you know, you have Hunter Hilly, you have Tyler Barch, you have Jason Herman, you have Andrew Haas, all able to take the ball out of the backfield. You've seen them line up in I, you've seen them line up in a double wing, you've seen them line up in wing T, and you've also seen them line up in spread. So that's one of the things, too, that Coach Sean Downey has brought to Stockton this year as the offensive coordinator, is being able to spread the ball around to different facets. One of the key things for Stockton is obviously they got to get more accurate in throwing the ball. We've mentioned it many times. Garrett Buskey is a quarterback who can throw the ball very well, but they just need to get more accurate with it in order for it to become effective. Obviously, Herman has replaced Colin Dvorak at the running back spot. He's getting upwards of 20 carries a game. So you mix that in with whatever they're going to do with Barch and Hilly and Haas as well, and you know it's a lot of misdirection, dives, leads, traps, things like that Stockton's doing. Du-Pec, like we said, you know, they want to go for a wide. They want to hit Gabe Howard as often as possible on the pass. They want to be able to run Taylor up the middle or Stifter up the middle, or even Justin Wishart, who had a big game this past week against Galena, where he ran for almost 100 yards. You start to add in, you know, guys like Mason Manning that can go out there and get the ball as well. Stifter has also lined up in a receiver position. So they're using many different options as well, spreading their game out, trying to hit different patterns, do different things. And that's where this game becomes very tough to judge on who you think is going to win. What's your take? You've seen both of these guys play.
What's my take on the game as a whole, or just who am I taking?
Either way. Who you taking?
I can't let down my Du-Pec faithful.
Okay.
But, no. After seeing both teams, I mean, you bring up a really valid point about that tough Galena team that doesn't appear to be tough on paper, but we've seen them, and they're nothing to mess around with. But I do still like Du-Pec over Stockton in this matchup.
At the beginning of the year, I had Du-Pec over Stockton as well. Stockton's always a tough place to play, but I think the Du-Pec Rivermen can do it this year as well. I like the Rivermen in this game. We move to Lena Winslow, where they will play host to Orangeville. Orangeville comes in this game with a 3-2 record. Lena Winslow perfect at 5-0. Last week, Orangeville beat East Dubuque 29-28, where Lena Winslow beat Stockton 30-0. Last time these two teams met came back in 2006 in Week 2, where Lena Winslow won 50-0. You're smiling?
Because I was there. I'm old. Yes, actually, I still remember that game, but go on.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad that you do. But Orangeville's done a lot of good things thus far. Obviously, they've had the loss to Aquin, where it took them a while to get going. I mean, they were down 3 scores before they started to play. But to this point, they've actually played Aquin the best out of the teams that they've faced, that are undefeated, I should say, that Aquin has played. Orangeville has played them the best. Likewise, Orangeville did lose that game to Du-Pec 10-0 here 2 weeks ago now. I'm back in week 4.
But don't forget that was a very low-scoring game. I mean, it wasn't like...
Right. And I mean, Orangeville had opportunities, obviously, many opportunities, because you take, like we had stated before, you take a look at that game, Orangeville and Du-Pec were neck and neck. They were even. I mean, yardage-wise was right there. It was like 213, 216, or 220, 216. They were right there.
Oh, yeah, it was like 213 to 216, absolutely. Yeah. But, I mean, even then you look at, you know, Jordan was out that week.
Yep.
I mean, Jordan played a crucial part this week, being back.
Huge part. And it provides Orangeville with a different dimension to bring to you. And that was a dimension that they did not have when they played Du-Pec. And so they had to rely on a lot of Rotoball and Kleckler, and that's exactly what Du-Pec was geared up for. They were geared up to stop Rotoball. And, yeah, I mean, Rotoball still got his yards. I mean, he got, I think he had, 96 yards in that game. So he was effective, but not as effective as he could have been had Jordan been in the backfield and given him that third option. Obviously, Lena Winslow's Lena Winslow. Ranked number 2 in state, as I have mentioned numerous times. They are a lot of people's pick around the state as the team to beat in Class 1A. This week against Stockton was the first game that they've had that they did not put up a running clock. However, they did win that game in shutout fashion, 30-0. You take a look at first team defense for Lena Winslow. Through 5 games, their first team defense has only allowed 6 points. So it's pretty impressive, to say the least, what Lena Winslow has done. And those 6 points came to East Dubuque on a pass play that they got burned on. 5 games, 6 points. First team defense. Pretty good. Obviously, you know, you got to come with the mindset that you're going to come ready to play. And for Orangeville to have that opportunity in this game, they're going to need Rotoball and Kleckler to lead the charge and get these boys rolling, because they're not going to have the advantage on the line. And win, lose, or draw, all you can say is, I left everything on the field. You got to bring it. And this is a great opportunity for Orangeville to show Lena Winslow who they are. They may not win this game. I got Lena Winslow picked in this game. But if Orangeville can come with that tenacity, it's going to set them up for the last 3 weeks of the season so that they can get prepared for the playoffs. And that's what Orangeville needs to be focused on. Lena Winslow needs to stay focused and not overlook anybody, because the minute they do that, they're going to get beat. And this week, though, Lena Winslow.
Make it 2.
Well, we're at that time of the season where EPC switches from Lanark to Pearl City, and they're going to play host against Aquin. Aquin comes in with a 5-0 mark. EPC comes in with a 2-3 mark. Obviously, last week, Aquin beat Amboy 52-24, where EPC lost to Dakota 7-0. The last time these two teams met were in 2005 in Week 6, where Aquin won 28-6. Coincidentally, it's also the last year that Aquin won a state title, and it was the last year of the geographic north-south split in the NUIC until they brought it back this season. Taking a look, I mean, we were able to pick up EPC this weekend along with Aquin, back-to-back days. Obviously, everybody knows that Aquin has a good-sized line. Keep getting questions, well, where'd this line come from? It's not hard when you've been young. I mean, you got to remember, Aquin was a really young team last year, dominated by sophomores. So, sophomore to junior growth, shazam. You got some big boys. It happens all the time. That sophomore to junior year is a big difference when you are growing, you know. And strength-wise, build-wise, it's just all of a sudden, here they are. And that's why we don't put a lot of stock in fresh soft football. Fresh soft football is exactly what it is there for. It's there for development, and that's all it should be used for. If you're trying to win fresh soft conference titles, you have a problem. You're not going to win when you get to varsity level, probably. But Aquin has done a great job. Coach Kunder, Coach Blackburn, Coach Gron, the entire staff, they've done an excellent job at getting Aquin's line play up to a different level. Obviously, everybody knows about Will Gustafson. Everybody is starting to learn more about Andrew Bowman. We had mentioned Andrew Bowman last year. This year, he's definitely stepped up even more, making big plays, getting a lot of scores. I don't want to forget, they still have Brennan Carlson that's getting big plays.
Steeple.
Ty Steeple has stepped in huge in the absence of Ethan Yount. Obviously, Steeple would have been highly used in the spread formation as a receiver as well. And then, they also have Heath Bruner in there. He's doing some things for them as well. So you take a look at what Aquin's able to do, and then you add in the level of play that Gustafson's been playing at. I mean, heck, he threw his first 2 interceptions of the season over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's outside of those 2 possessions, he's done a really good job of making good decisions. EPC is going to bring them a new challenge. EPC probably has the best 3-down linemen in the conference in Bryson Sturtevant, Eli Dirtz, and Wyatt Hammer. And those guys are going to challenge you. Aquin's definitely has the line size to be able to play with these guys, but they haven't seen a line that puts on a pass rush like EPC does. I think what will happen is, EPC needs to get that pass rush going. They need to make Gustafson feel uncomfortable in the pocket, force him out of the pocket. Granted, when you force a guy like Will out of the pocket, you start to get into trouble there too, because he's still looking downfield, so he can still find a receiver.
And he's quick.
And he's fast. And he's a different kind of fast, especially at the quarterback position. I think EPC can have success provided they can get the pass game going. But one of the things that we saw in that EPC Dakota game was Braden Preston was targeted 8 out of their 13 throws. Mm-hmm. So they have to become more multi-dimensional as far as who they're targeting, because yes, it's ideal. You want to get the ball to your best playmaker, and at this point in the season, Braden Preston has proven to be their best receiver. But you have a big tight end in Carson Klaus too, and you can utilize his size, and he's got decent speed. You have to be able to do things that give a defense a different look. Running the ball up the middle with Heron is expected, but Heron is definitely a north-south runner, much like what we've seen in the past with, Garrett Bodiger, where it's just tuck and go. Mm-hmm. There's nothing elusive or shifty about him. He's just looking to punish you, and that's great to have. But he can't be your primary source of running the ball. And that's where EPC is trying to become more effective. And this is where Coach McNutt's done a good job to this point, because he's got the knowledge of the spread offense. So he can bring the different facets of what he knows with what EPC knew and mix them together. Defensively, though, EPC is going to come to hit. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. They've always been big at hitting. I just think that they have too many holes in their defense that will allow Aquin to attack the middle of the field. And provided that Will can stay within himself and not try to make the big play on every play and just take what's given to him, which to this point in the season he's done an excellent job of that, he's going to be able to pick apart EPC. And that's why I like the Bulldogs in this game.
I also like the Bulldogs in this matchup, especially like you brought up. Will had his first 2 interceptions. I mean, he threw an interception, and then they got it right back.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he did not let it faze him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just did a lot of good things. I mean, he answered those 2 interceptions with 2 touchdown runs of his own. So it did not offset him. I mean, you're not going to get in this kid's head. He is a competitor, and competitors, they don't care if they screw up. They want to get out there and they're going to keep coming at you, and that's exactly what Will did. And I mean, it just shows the mental toughness that he has, and you know that's huge, especially at this level. But yeah, Aquin. AFC at Milledgeville. Both teams come in with an 0-5 mark. AFC lost to West Carroll last week 36-8, where Milledgeville lost to Forreston 54-8. Last year, Milledgeville won this game in Week 7, 46-6. And if you take a look at what these 2 teams have done to this point this season, obviously Milledgeville has a close loss to East Dubuque back in Week 2. They played very close with EPC as well in that loss there. They held Stockton to just 26 points in their Week 1 meeting with them. And then, of course, they were blown away by Aquin and Forreston. AFC, on the other hand, you know, they lost significant to East Dubuque. They were beat bad by Orangeville. They only gave up 26 points to Stockton as well. And then, you know, losing to Forreston and West Carroll, that was seen as what was going to happen. I think these 2 teams can match up with each other fairly well. Obviously, AFC has done a lot to change some things up. So they're not running the ball so much. They're trying to throw the ball a little bit more with Ethan Drew. Milledgeville, obviously, they're just doing what Milledgeville does. And that's trying to continue to run the ball. Granted, neither season has really been successful for either team, unfortunately. But it's one of those things where you look for growth. Listening into the AFC game against West Carroll, they had a lot of opportunities that just didn't pan out. They either made a mistake, had a penalty at a wrong time, turned the ball over, something to that genre, or just a turnover on downs. They stalled out a drive. And they did that a couple times in that game with West Carroll. So, I mean, they had things going. They just couldn't complete them. Obviously, Milledgeville has had a couple of games that they've been in, and it's shocked quite a few people. But Milledgeville is one of those teams, you know, they're like you stated earlier, you know, every team this year is out hitting you. And anybody can play with anybody. It's just, how bad do you want it, and are you going to go get it? Obviously, there's teams that are going to shine out more than others, but you still got to bring that level of play. Right now, at this point in the season, I still think Milledgeville is the stronger team of the 2, and I like the Missiles in this game.
I also like the Missiles in this game.
We shift to Forreston for our game of the week, where the Cardinals will play host to West Carroll. The Thunder come in with a 4-1 mark. Forreston comes in perfect at 5-0. Last week, West Carroll beat AFC 36-8, where Forreston beat Milledgeville 54-8. In this time frame, it has gone unnoticed, but with last week's win, Forreston has tied their school mark for most consecutive wins at 15 games. If you go back to last year, they were 2-2 coming out of week 4, where they won 10 straight games, and now they've opened up this season with 5 straight wins. Roll back to 2016, they were 14-0, won week 1, and then they lost in week 2. So 15 games. So Forreston has tied that mark with the most consecutive wins. So obviously this game is huge for Forreston because they can rewrite their own record books as far as that goes. Obviously West Carroll coming at 4-1. A surprise to some, not a surprise to some. Quite honestly, I thought they would come in at 3-2 at this point in the juncture, and I thought that they needed to be at 3-2 at this point in the juncture to be able to be in the playoff talks. Coming in at 4-1, they're definitely past that mark, as they are looking for win number 5. Taking a look at their schedule after Forreston, they have Milledgeville, Du-Pec, and Aquin still on the slate, so they still have some games there that are games that they can definitely match up in to be able to get those wins that they need to close out their opportunity to get in the playoffs. Forreston obviously just taking care of business. They've put together their 4th straight running clock game, doing what Forreston does, you know. Lead, dive, trap, double lead, couple pass plays here and there. Typical Forreston football. It's nothing flashy. It's just, it's systematic football, and they're very, very good at it.
Oh, you throw in 15 different ball carriers. It's like a magic show. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, but we know that in the grand scheme of things, they got 6. But you're right. You don't know who to key on when they're bringing all those different backs in. You know, sometimes Forreston shows their hand a little bit, especially when they're in the double wing and they go into motion. You know that more times than not, when they go into motion, the ball's going in the direction that they're going into motion. What Forreston's very good at, and what Bailey Culler is very good at running this offense, is ball deception. You know, because you see that where they'll drive that wing back coming across, and everything looks like it's going to go on one side, and then all of a sudden the ball's going to the fullback going off to the weak side that was just vacated. So, you know, it's hard to key in on. And that's where you have to be very fundamental in your defense. You have to play gap defense, you have to stay home, and you have to read your assignments. You mess up in any one of those areas, and Forreston's got you beat. West Carroll obviously is going to run a spread type offense. They're going to want to spread things out, get Derek Tracy some room to move so he can scramble if needed, is able to get the pass plays off that he can get off. Obviously utilize, you know, Michael Popkin and Aiden Sullivan and even Cody Sipe. And they're going to want to at least throw some different things at Forreston here. One thing that you're going to get out of West Carroll is you're going to get a team that wants to fight. You know, and I don't mean fight as in a bad way. I mean, they're going to come in and they're going to hit you.
Their way to
yes.
do the best that they can. Yep.
But I still like Forreston in this game. Forreston's going to become 6-0 after this week. All right, we move into our bench warmers player of the week, and this week there was a couple players that we could definitely choose from, which made our decision very hard as we were contemplating going back and forth with different picks and who we thought should get it, shouldn't get it. And of course there were some that have already received it, and you know, they still had big games, but we don't want to double up and reward people twice. So with that said, in the South, our winner is Derek Tracy of West Carroll. Derek had 140 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, 53 yards rushing, and he had 1 interception on defense as West Carroll beat AFC 36-8 on Thursday night. And in the north, we're going to go to Orangeville with Carter Kleckler. Kleckler had a huge game for the Broncos, 12 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 56 yards rushing, and the game-deciding touchdown. And boy, was that touchdown run ever emphatic.
I'm sorry, that was just a nerve-wracking game. It could have gone any which way. That was a great game.
It was.
I mean, a fantastic game if you're not a fan. If you're a fan, then you're just like, just get this over with.
Yes, definitely. So obviously, great job on your performances, both to Carter and to Derek. Stop into Bench Warmers. You can get your free extra large pizza and wings for your performances. And thanks again to Eric White and Bench Warmers for supporting us and bringing forward our sponsorship with them to bring these great prizes to the players. We move into our NUIC Power 5, and really not a lot of changes here once again. A lot of things went the way we thought they would. We did have a little bit of movement, not much. So coming at number 1, still Lena Winslow 5-0, and Forreston at number 2 at 5-0. Obviously, those 2 teams are going to meet here in 2 more weeks, or I should say in another week, week 7. We're going into week 6 now, so week 7. So that's going to be huge there. That could change some shuffling around. Obviously, those 2 teams are ranked 1 and 2 in state. Number 3 is Aquin at 5-0. They also are trying to get some big things. They get their a real big test here this week with EPC, and then upcoming in week 8, they get their showdown with Forreston. Coming at number 4 still are the Rivermen of Du-Pec as they improved to 4-1 with their win over Galena. Again, they have another big game this week with Stockton, so we'll see what happens with the Rivermen there. And coming in at number 5, once again, back into our Power 5, are the West Carroll Thunder as they improved to 4-1, knocking out the Stockton Blackhawks. Obviously, Stockton has their opportunity to get back in, depending on their game this week with Du-Pec. West Carroll, though, comes in at 4-1. Obviously, here again, big game this week for West Carroll going to Forreston. But should be a lot of good games, especially for our Power 5, so stay tuned to see what happens next. All right, so that concludes our Week 6 preview. Obviously, a lot of good games to look forward to as we move on into the season. We're past the halfway point now. We're starting to see the playoff eligible games come along with the playoff clinchers, which turns us into one of the best parts of the season where we start to see the separation of who's going to get in and who's not going to get in. It also brings us an opportunity to start doing our playoff outlook. Obviously, IHSA started their playoff outlook last week. We will start bringing ours forward this week and get predictions out there as far as where we see things picturing out, potential matchups, seeds, all that good jazz that we like to do to get everybody all riled up like we normally do when it comes to that. It's far too early for anything to be set in stone, but it's just to give you a picture of what could happen, what to expect, and, you know, to be quite honest, we've been pretty accurate at it over the past 3 years, so either way, it's just something to do for fun. Obviously, it gives people things to talk about, and that's what's great about it. Anyhow, lots of big games this week. Out of the 7 games this week, 6 of them are probably going to be huge. Either way, get out to the game, support your teams, support your communities. As always, root for the NUIC.